We are live.
Hello.
What's up?
I forgot to turn it on ourselves.
Oopsie. Make sure it's low, huh? There you go. What's up?
That was funny.
Remix for our 50th episode.
50!
Okay, whoa, relax. Don't yell.
Sorry.
Before we start, don't forget to go get your Organo Gold black coffee and other great flavors. Mocha, latte. Taste is great, health benefits are there, and it's 100% organic.
And that was his voice. For commercials.
What's up, everyone? Okay, so today Chris is going to lead again with some
Culmination. It's the culmination of the past few episodes we've done, and it's really coming down to the biggest part, where you do need extra help for this part, and it's the extremism of stuff. So for example, in reality, you know you're at a good place in your life when you know that you are enough, that you are good, that you are worthy.
Confident.
This is what drives your confidence. This is what drives you into being who you need to be. Someone has messaged
If I was
us.
in Montreal, yeah, my cousin.
Oh, nice.
If I was in Montreal,
Welcome.
I'd be at your front door.
Nice.
Yeah, many more people would be at our front door too. Hopefully.
So, just as a review of the past episodes, we're talking about the ecosystem of a human being. What is it that goes on around us? How that influenced us? How growing up we come to realize certain thoughts are in our head. Last week we talked about the ego and how the ego is like a Lego set that you bought with instructions, but then as you become older you realize you don't have the instructions anymore and you don't like the Lego anymore. So you crack it down and you rebuild with it. And you develop an ego that you could be proud of, that is actually yours.
A healthy ego.
A healthy ego. And we talked about it being like a jacket on top of your soul. Because your soul is your body, mind, and spirit together, while your ego is how you deal with the life you live around you. For example, why choose to drive a Ferrari? The ego made you believe that. Because there's outside forces that have come in, and you have to ask yourself the biggest question, like Anthony brought up last week, where is it that maybe it's your father's idea, or your uncle's idea, even your mom. Your mom could be a car fanatic too. The point is, when does it become yours? When does it become your idea, your ego, your jacket? And today we're going to talk about how there are extreme powers out there that can cause somebody to feel empty, to feel like there's a dark hole. And that's where addiction starts. That's where extremism begins. And once that takes a hold of you, you kind of lose sight of where you are. Your soul, your ego kind of takes a step back.
You lose where the balance of life is in general.
Exactly.
Not just who you are, but just you as a whole, but your harmony and balance of life as well.
And that's where you got to ask yourself the biggest question: have I lost myself? And the answer is going to be yes. So let's talk about these extreme situations.
So when we talk about extreme, I'm going to add to that. When we talk about extreme, it could be good or bad. There's always those extreme, both ends of the pole, right? And that's why we want to try and be in the middle as much as possible. And we're not always talking about moderation. Moderation is great. It keeps yourself balanced, but moderation is for also, and I guess you could say it's in my opinion, but moderation is more for those that they have a backdoor to, I'm going to use the word cheat, but it's not really the right word to use, but we could use it as a cheat meal and a cheat day and a cheat this or whatever. It's doing things in moderation, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be balanced either. Balance is when the whole system, so it can be the ecosystem, health system, training system, mind system, when everything is in harmony, that's when you have created a proper balance. And when you start doing moderation, that's because you went through the work that you had to do to create a proper balance and harmony in your ecosystem, in your body, or in your lifestyle, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and we've brought up examples. For example, a beehive. A beehive is an ecosystem of its own. It knows who's the queen, it knows where the worker bees, it knows where the pollinators, who are the unloading people, and so on and so forth. So this is how it goes in harmony. And a human being, there's something extra there. There's a conscious mind. And then you have to ask yourself, when does the conscious mind have control? And when is it that the conscious mind doesn't have to be there? Because see, sometimes your conscious mind can be extreme. That's where the conscious mind starts to worry too much. And that's because of traumas. See, if traumas take control of you, like PTSD, then your consciousness is overloaded. And sometimes your body becomes overloaded. So being that it's a loud noise and now you're scared. It's these extremes we're talking about today. And it's in the way that you do need help sometimes. And that's totally okay. Because on a chemical level, your body is imbalanced. Now, when that occurs, your chemical imbalancement needs to be readjusted. And that's why help is necessary. We want to talk about
we're
that?
talking more on the chemical level, biochemical level. It's more like the dopamine, the serotonin, basically your neurotransmitters. And again, if you don't know what a neurotransmitter is basically the small impulses that are sent from the electrical impulses that are sent from one cell to another to bring the information that it needs, whether it's to make a movement, make a thought, or create a movement, digestion, whatever the case may be. Those are little messengers. So when your dopamine is in any of the extremities, poorly, weak, or extremely high, then that's when you start to develop like we're going to mention is the addictions, the not feeling good, not having any drive to do anything. You got the serotonin, not feeling happy, you don't have no motivation, there's no drive, no nothing.
It leads to the word dysfunction.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're not functioning properly.
I wouldn't even use dysfunction, I would use more imbalance. We'll use more imbalance.
Imbalance, yeah. Because things that are balanced function properly.
Yeah.
When things are imbalanced, it can cause a lot of other issues.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it. And when we look at obviously drugs rev up your actually it could be rev up your dopamine or decrease your dopamine. Chances are they're decreasing your dopamine, and that's why you want to try and have more drugs, because you're so low in dopamine that you're not creating the stimulus that you need, that you're not making your body feel good or feel happy.
And since we're on the topic of dopamine, let's talk about goals.
Mm-hmm. That's another driver as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So having a goal comes to the topic of immediate ramification,
Instant
gratification, or delayed gratification. Our phones, so much research on it, has caused us not to want delayed gratification anymore. It has to be immediate, it has to be now. But see, that's an addiction.
When's the last time you had a conversation with someone and you had to think back in the 1980s? Oh, I remember this guy. Let's take hockey because it's the first thing that popped in my head. This team won the cup in 1985. No, you don't think anymore. You research right away onto your phone. Okay, I know the answer. There's no more discussion.
There's no more discussion. And
there's no more thinking.
And, discussion and thinking, because sometimes some people believe they're right away, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
And then people can find a different source that says a different conversation, and then it starts another fight. And then someone says, conspiracist, or the other one says, you're an extremist. Conversations have decreased because of this. And this is where extremism is a major problem. And I think that's why it's important it's our 50th episode. Because we have to ask ourselves sometimes, are we closed-minded or are we open-minded? And open-minded really looks like what it is today in this conversation with no name podcast. It's to be knowing. It's to ask yourself these questions. It's to explore the possibilities.
And you know what? I'm going to just add to that. It's not even just knowing, because obviously we can't know everything. And if you have someone that tells you they know everything, you'll start running away from them. But we can't know everything, but even us that we try and do our own research, we might have a different research than other people. It's just creating the awareness more than knowing, right? So me and Chris both have different knowledges, different knowing, different know-hows, but we always come together to create that education or that awareness that it blends together. It creates that balance that we have.
Exactly.
And then that's why we're able to project it or bring it on to our viewers so that we can create that awareness for other people that resonate with us as well.
And cause curiosity to explore some more. Because the truth is, even science itself always evolves. And if you ever watched a show called Always Sunny in Philadelphia, there's a great episode about how you really make you think twice about how you're actually having faith that science is very truthful, because it could be false. Just like how in the past people believed the earth was flat, and then no, it was round. And then they found out instead of going around the sun, instead of the sun going around us, we go around the sun. Science always evolves. And actually another smart guy who believed in alchemy in the way that he ate some mercury because he thought he could turn it into gold. Point is, things change. And the idea is consciousness changes. Evolution changes.
We change.
We
and
change.
You know what? Here's a fun fact, if you guys want, is that every 3 months our cells actually change in the body. And we're talking about biochemistry, right? So every 3 months your body, actually every 3 weeks, your body, if you take necessary changes, your body actually starts changing. Every 3 months your cells actually start to change. So in your own body, you could create a different cellular stimulus for the better, of course. That's what we hope for, is for a better balance in the body, right? And then every 7 years, this is I guess why it's funny that if you stay with your spouse or your significant other for more than 7 years, then you know you hit the market, you hit the milestone, because every 7 years your whole body, every cell in your body actually changes. So that's where different thought patterns come across. That's where different, I'll bring up, allergies can be shifted or changed or completely disintegrated. Growing up as just your thought pattern, I'll take myself for example, you're not wanting to have kids, and then eventually, who knows, things change, you meet someone that's different and your thought pattern changes. So everything changes, evolves. And that even goes even deeper, we could call it neuroplasticity. Now what's neuroplasticity? So neuroplasticity is actually the stress stimulus to your brain. It's creating new cells in the brain.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's creating new neurons, new cells. I mean, we could go on deep with this.
And actually, now you just reminded me, it's actually the way to prevent Alzheimer's.
A whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. The more active you are, the more your body says, I'm one with going on to change. Yeah. And you can say that that's one with the universe. And that's actually very interesting. So when we do talk about extremism, it's really choosing not to change. Yeah. It's choosing to stick to something in your heart you feel you shouldn't change.
And that's a good point to also make, because you could be so comfortable but driven by ego, that one extreme, and that's where you don't want to change because you're so ego driven and everything in your life is perfect, but really in reality nothing's actually perfect, because you're just driven by ego. And you could be, I hate to say this, but you could be a big freaking asshole and you don't even realize it,
because you're lying to yourself, you're lying to the people you love.
Yeah.
And those individuals sometimes have to make a really tough decision to cut you off.
Yeah, but because that drives you kind of in a negative state as well, right? Because you're so driven by ego. And then you have the other extremity where you're so comfortable being sad or negative or depressed that you don't even know what or how to change to be better, because you've always lived in that state. So for you, it's, I'm going to stay in that state, I don't want to change. But the minute you start to change from both extremes, to let go of the ego and start living with love, or to start coming out of the comfort zone and start developing new ideas, new opportunities, then we start creating that balance and that harmony.
And that's where, in the fields of health, the real way to make change is by doing exactly what Anthony said. At some level, you need a chemical change. So you do need medication, you need supplements, you need something to change the inside of you.
Just a thought process. Change your thought process is the first step.
And the best way to do that is with a journal, because even trying to think it might be difficult, but writing it down and rereading it
and saying it out loud too.
Saying it out loud starts to change the way it was.
So here's a nice analogy. Here, finish your sentence first.
And just to finish, the environment you're in can change.
Yeah.
For example, sometimes we hold on to 100 pictures of someone we've lost.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we need to reduce that 100 to 50 and put other photos of people you have around you instead. Because holding on to the past and holding on to sometimes people who've moved on is you holding on to the past.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta live in the present and not worry about the future because it hasn't happened yet.
Cool. So what I was gonna say is,
He was about to say words that came out of his
Yes.
mouth.
No, I was actually gonna say that. I'm actually thinking of something else now that you made me think of the past. Fudge. So
Whoops.
see how my thought pattern went the other way. So basically, what were you saying?
We were talking right before that about health being changed from a chemical level
Thought patterns. Yes.
to
Okay.
the thought pattern and
Yes.
then to your ecosystem
Yes.
in front of you.
Okay. Wow.
And
Sorry
that's an
about that.
eco change from within on a chemical level because your gut, like he's mentioned 1,000 times, your stomach has power over you, right? What you feed your stomach, what's going on in your stomach. Did you know fungus can live in your stomach? Crazy stuff. Anyways, extreme.
Fungus actually kills fungus in your body, just like fungus kills fungus on a tree.
And sometimes you can have a bad one causing other problems.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say is, you could think something, right? But a thought gets erased right away. The minute you put it down on paper, it becomes more realistic. But then when you start repeating it out loud, you're actually projecting your manifestation to everything outside, and you keep hearing it yourself. So the more you hear it, so it's one thing to think it and then it leaves, but then it's another thing to write it. It becomes more concrete, perfect. But now you're starting to repeat it and say it, and it gets more engraved into your own mind, and it's you talking to yourself, technically speaking, because you're reading your own notes. It's you talking to yourself, so it's continuously in the back of your mind, and you create that manifestation.
You're programming it.
Yes, you're rewiring your brain to deprogram and reprogram your mind so it's more positive and manifest again what you actually want in your life.
Conditioning
it. Yeah.
And it's very important to do that because when you realize you're on an extreme path that you're not happy with, you need to take extreme measures to change and get back onto a healthy, balanced ecosystem. And like we've talked about the ecosystem, it comes from everywhere when it comes to a person. It comes from your gut, comes from your mind, comes from your body, comes from around you, and this is the reality. And so that's why grieving is very important. Sometimes the grieving stages is where people get stuck. For example, there are 5 major ones. Shock. And being in shock is really being whoa. This is whoa. The next one is denial, bargaining. And in that area, you bargain and you bargain, which is where a lot of addictions begin. Because, for example, if you truly believe that the only way to be happy is by eating McDonald's every day, that's an extreme thing. Because we all know eating McDonald's every day is going to cause you more problems. But as you can see, it's an extreme thing. Then the next stage is anger. When you're angry, a lot of things can happen. You can start breaking things, you start pushing people away, and like Anthony mentioned, you can be a real asshole. The next one is depression. And depression is because you're truly letting go and grieving out the change that occurred. And that's healthy. It's getting stuck in there that's not healthy. And last but not least, acceptance. But acceptance only happens once you face these other 4 things.
And forgive.
And forgiveness. And that's another thing about forgiveness. It's not about forgiving others. It's about forgiving yourself. Because once you forgive yourself for how you handled it, because sometimes you don't handle it properly, and that's okay. School didn't teach you how to. People like ourselves want to teach you. Because knowledge like this is important. It's what it is to be human. It's part of the eco-human system. I just made another one.
We'll come up with things on the fly.
Oh yeah, with eco. So, to really bring everything together on the topic and the series of eco, it's recognizing that there's a lot of systems working at the same time. Just like a car, you turn on the engine, but you realize there's petroleum, there's gasoline, there's another type of gas, which I'm forgetting the word right now. There's a lot of things going on in the system. There's the system of the AC. The system of the AC is attached to the others and sometimes rated differently. And when you recognize why your car is overheating, it's because your AC is not working sometimes, or it's because it's so hot outside. All these ecosystems interact. And when it comes to being human, we get the chance to be conscious about it. And sometimes being conscious could be very scary, which is where the PTSD could come in, right? You're aware, and then you're aware that there's dangers out there. And then you think there's dangers everywhere. And that's where dysfunctions come in, disorders come in, anxieties, and so on and so forth. So the point I'm making is recognizing that there are multiple levels to getting healthy again. There's your insides, there's your body, there's your thoughts, and then there's the people around you. And it's okay that you might be caught up in an extreme tornado, for example. It's recognizing it. That's the first step to everything. I am aware. I am aware that I'm buying comics too much. I am aware that I'm buying too much McDonald's. I am aware I'm drinking too much alcohol, or so on and so forth. The moment you're aware is the moment the extremism ends. But you have to recognize yourself. Is it extreme? And again, is it balanced?
The first step to any healing is being aware.
Aware.
So be aware. Brought up a good point before, but when you look at
Brain farts.
No, I'm actually just like, I feel like I'm not even here right now. That's
I sent you to another level.
What I was gonna say was more like the healing process. Like, you can't always be healthy, just like you can't always be rich. So in order to be healthy, you have to learn from experiences, of course, and you have to learn how to be healthy from feeling sick.
And live within your means.
And live
I think that's what you're going for.
Well, that, yeah, but I'm more going to the point where it's not just I'm getting to the point where rich, you became rich at one point, but you're in order to be rich, you have to learn through all the failures.
Yes.
So you don't become rich overnight unless you live in a rich family, but that doesn't mean that you are rich. You were given the richness.
And then, because you don't know how to handle it, you become extreme.
Yes.
You spend it all.
Yeah, you become well, exactly, good point. You become extreme, and then you become poor. So then you're not going to be poor all your life. So then you're going to end up making more money, and you end up becoming rich again because you learned how. You know, just like when we come, we'll take a business. You're not always going to be making money in a business, and the business owners, well, technically, they should know this. You know, just like you have months where it's completely dead, you're not making as much money. It could go on for years on years, just like you could go years on years where you're making a shit ton of money. Sorry my expression, but you can make a ton of money, and you just got to know how to deal with that money after. So you become rich. But at the beginning of all that, you had to live in the streets. Technically speaking, we're just gonna like hypothetically.
You had to make mistakes.
You had to make the mistakes. You know, we always say this. You got to make 99. You got to take 100 shots to make that 101 shot the main focus, the main success after, right? So it's the same thing with health. If you want to be able to be healthy, well, first you got to know how to be healthy, and you got to know what made you become healthy with the experiences you had around you. Were you sick to begin with? Were you living the experiences of others that you ended up taking your own health into your own hands, and you just make sure that you're never going to be sick? So that's what I was trying to get at. Is, you know, you gotta constantly be in that balance where if you're always going to be healthy, well, there was a reason why you're healthy. If you're going to be rich, there's a reason why you're rich.
And it's because you're aware.
Yeah.
And you're consciously aware of what is healthy, what is not healthy.
And being aware is because you learned from it, not just
Yes.
going through the motions. It's putting it as you're not just putting it aside. It's you're actually consciously learning and moving forward from what you missed out on.
And that's where it becomes you knowing you are enough.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the extremism is because you think you're not enough. Like they like to say, there's a black hole and it's just sucking it all up. The only way to really close it up is realizing, you know what, this is enough. This is how much you get today. Black
That
hole.
emptiness fades, right?
Exactly.
And you become whole again. When you start loving yourself and forgiving yourself.
And I think that's what love. I think that could be our next series. What is love? Healthy love.
Okay, we could go on that, but a lot of people are gonna have different opinions on love. So
Right.
we'll give our opinion on love.
Exactly.
So I
that's
think
our 50th episode on extreme and learning to find balance within the extreme.
yeah,
Because we live in an extreme world. And sometimes that's where we have to take our boundaries and say, oh, that's enough. I'm good here.
yeah.
I don't need to buy $100,000 of makeup. I like my face as it is.
Aside from all the chemicals, I'm just saying.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll leave you guys on that, and we'll see you guys next week.
We care.
And we care.